So quiet this morning. Yeah, let's get started. It's 8 o'clock. So after a bunch of questions from people yesterday and seemed like we should just continue on with IRT, can everybody start up Skyline and get back to that IRT C18 calibration file? So you'll see, I switched back to the computer I was using yesterday, and I've got this file in my list of recent files. You have been doing other work as well, so you may. Oh, come back, please. So you may have some other files that you've been looking at, but somewhere in that list should be hopefully your IRT C18 calibration file. So that's what you want to get open. So that's where I was with mine. We were looking at the difference. All we have is the peptides at this point, and we were looking at the difference in the residuals, which is an expression of sort of how closely the peptides match our expectations. Between SSR calc and our calibrated IRT standards. So actually, let's start up with a question. Let's switch back to. So do people have this file up? Anybody not have this file up yet? Because I'll just wait if you don't. Okay, yeah. So you would, to get the regression plot up, you would go view, retention times, regression, score to run, and then you'd be there. And then if you know, the way we got to be looking at SSR calc was to we went to calculator and chose SSR calc, and I'm going to switch back to our IRT C18 calculator, where, because the scale wasn't fixed, it's maybe a little hard to tell, but it still looks like the points are all spread out, but we went from being spread out over 3 minutes, or 6 minutes, to spread out over 1 minute. So just in these set of peptides, and where did these values come from? The score values, the IRT C18 score values for all these peptides? What did we end up doing to get those scores? Do you remember? Yeah, we just used the standard measurements. We didn't actually calibrate these values. So I guess I'm going to say let's go back in and calibrate them and see what that looks like. So settings, peptide settings, and then so we talked about the difference between using standard values that somebody's measured on some other instrument somewhere versus calibrating them to your instrument. And we did that, and then at the end we said, oh well, forget that. Let's just use the standard diagnosis values. But we're gonna go back and undo that. So is everybody to settings, peptide settings in this document, where you can see a retention time predictor IRT C18. Everybody following? Okay, so then what you do is you click this little calculator button and you go edit current. And that brings up our calculator, and it actually shows us that we actually have the standard values for IRT, for diagnosis 11 and IRT C18. So But what we're going to do is we're going to recalibrate them by clicking Calibrate. And 0 to 100 are the values we want, so we just click Use Results, and then that gives us our 11 peptides. And by default, it will assume the fixed points are on either end, which is usually just fine. You don't really, I don't know why exactly Biognosis did this, but we wanted to make it possible to reproduce what Biognosis did, so you just check this second one. So that we'll get at least values close to the standard values. Does anybody need more time on that? Okay, so click OK. And now you'll see that I no longer have this drop down no longer shows the IRT state team because we're not using the standard Biognosis IRT C18 values anymore. We're using self-calibrated ones. And so now we just click OK. And OK again. And now you can see our residuals, and they're spanning like 1/100th of a. So this is probably rounding error at this point. But there's one more thing we can do because we're out. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed when you explained about the residuals.
So the residuals are. So let's switch out of the residuals mode. Let's go back to regression mode. Plot. Correlation. So the residuals are to this line. So it's basically how far away, so you can't even tell if the points aren't on the line, right? Because we just calibrated them. And so then we say, okay, well let's see how far off the line they are. That's the residuals. So if we switch back to plot residuals, then we can see that they're not perfectly on the line, which is a little bit surprising since we supposedly just calibrated them to the line. So the one thing, so this might be rounding error in the calculation. The other possibility is that if you, because it's, we're talking about 100ths of a minute, right? This is from a range of 400ths of a minute. So less than a second. But so one thing, the last thing we can do is we're actually looking, if you go to replicates, if you right-click on that graph and go to replicates, we're looking at something that's the average over all replicates. So if we switch to single replicate, then we'll be looking at the regression for the individual replicate. And it still has residuals, and the reason is that we calibrated based on two things. So we actually ended up taking the averages of those, and so it's not, unless we did one run, calibrated to one run, we're not going to get these residuals on this line. But it's really pretty close, right? It's a lot closer than the original standard values. Okay, so that's how you would calibrate. That's how you would calibrate a calculator based on your own peptides. You would just set up a document with those peptides, and you would go through those steps that we've been through. So now let's go through. The next thing we want to do is add more peptides, right? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Is there any suggested number of how many regression runs you have if you want to actually set like really nice calibrated IoT for
we take the median value, so maybe at least 3. I don't have experience of like, oh, you really need X, or so I guess I can't provide a whole lot of guidance there, but I do think having more than one's probably a good idea, and when we have more than one, we end up taking the median, which is why 2 is kind of a weird idea, because we're going to end up like splitting the difference, whereas the median across 3 is a more interesting thing. So that's about all the guidance I can give you on that. Okay, so now So we did that calibration. Let's just save that. And okay, so let's go. So we're going to open up a new file. So has everybody saved their calibration file? Okay, so then we go File, Open. And in this same directory is this IRT human. So double click and open that. And so this is just a set of human peptides that we're interested in calibrating now. And you can see that if you expand one of them, we've got light and heavy pairs. This may be our set of targets that we're interested in. And then what we'd like to do is add our standards to it, right? Because there's no site of the IRT standards, so just select at the top. I now like to put the IRT standards into my document. I like to put it at the top because it's pretty interesting to look at.
Hey, Brad.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed the point that you had to. What did you find?
The file is IRT human in the same folder as IRT standards and IRT calibration. So it's like in your IRT. So it should be right there when you do file open. And then now we're going to do file import. And we're going to import a document. And that document is going to be the IRT standards document. So now we saved what our our set of standards in this original standards document. The calibration document has data in it. It's not really what we want to import. We really want to import the settings that allow us to measure the IRT standards, right? The transitions. So go ahead and click open. So there's a lot, the ability to import documents into other documents, there's lots of sort of variants of that, powerful things you can do. That researcher, part of it came from Andrew Strigacci's. He measured he had 100 different documents to measure all these different proteins when he was doing express proteins, and he just wanted to zip that all up into one document, and that makes that possible too. But so now we have our standards. And let's go ahead and save this as a new thing. File save as. IRT human plus standards. And so then, so if we wanted to acquire data for this, so in this case, what do I think they don't actually acquire data for all the peptides. Yeah, we go. Yeah, so they didn't actually collect data for everything. So when we're in calibration mode, we don't necessarily want to collect both our heavy and our light, right? That's going to add transitions. So we just want to we're going to do a quick method where our only goal, the goal is not to quantify these things, it's just to figure out where they are in retention time space, right? So what we want to do is go to Edit, Refine, and Advanced. And we've seen this before. Last time we did it based on results, but there are some just basic nice operations you can do on a document, and one of them is to remove a label type. And so here we're just going to remove the light label type, because what they did is create a mixture of heavy only and measured, or maybe, I'm not sure actually. they only measured the heavies because those are the easiest to measure. So click OK to remove all the lights. And now you can see that I've removed all the lights, and what did we changed now to, we've got 600 transitions. And so we lost a bunch of precursors. We have one precursor per peptide. Well, almost. There must be a multiple charge state case. Yeah.
You also removed the calibration.
I did. Okay. So let's just go ahead and delete that. I guess I should have done that second. I have a version of Skyline I'm working on right now that just doesn't let refinement ever touch your standards, because of that. I find that kind of annoying. But yeah, so at this point, refinement will apply to your standards, which is kind of a pain. So we're going to re-import the document, file import document, and IRT C18 standards. Okay, so now they're back.
How are those peptides currently set as standards?
What?
Does Skyline know at the moment that these are standard peptides?
It doesn't. Yeah, so there's no, oh, that's true. Yeah, there's no clock, right? So we haven't set it up with the clock, and I'm not sure we need to. Yeah, but we do. Okay, great. Well, so we're gonna go to settings, peptide settings, predicted tab should already be active, and yeah, so at this point this is a new document. It says it doesn't have a predictor, and we're going to switch to that one that we just created, IRT C18 predictor. And click OK. And now we have the clock faces, right? So Skyline knows there. So yeah, it's possible that Skyline wouldn't have deleted them if it knew they were standards. Okay, so now we want to. We're going to do file export. File export. So we're going to export a transition list. And let's see, how many transitions do we have? 632. And we can't actually schedule yet because we don't know where these peptides are coming out, right? So should we use a single method for 632 transitions? Probably not. So let's go for multiple methods again. So in this case, we're not trying to quantify. They did actually just do two methods, and you can do the same by doing 335, I think. Yeah. So that would be it. Now you'd have, you're not doing any optimization or anything. You're not doing any scheduling, and you could now click OK. And name this, I don't know, IRT human calibration. And click enter, and then now if we went back to that folder, you'll see that there are these two IRT human calibration CSV files. Now let's have all the transitions we need to measure, and then we pretend that we go off and do that, and now we have our two raw files that represent those measurements. And now we're going to import, and actually that is what those are what the two files are that we just got our standards out of. They actually contain more than just the standards. They actually contain the human measurements too, and so we're going to get to reuse those now. But so let's go file import back in the file. People with me? Okay, file, import, results, and what kind of import are we doing? One replicate, right? We got two runs that cover all of our peptides. We want one replicate. We don't want a replicate per run. And what should we name the replicate? I don't know. Calibration. And click OK. And then we pick these two files, the 30, we're still in the 30-minute gradient files, and click the open button. And then Sky should start importing those. There we go. I'm a little worried. I think maybe we were supposed to remove the heavies. That's where I'm seeing a lot of gray. Alright, so yeah, we didn't actually get anything. Alright, so yeah, let's go ahead, see, do we have to... No, I think we can just edit, refine, advanced, and we're gonna, this time we'll check the add box, and we'll add all the lights back. Okay, and then click OK. And now we can see the little balls that indicate that we've got measurements. And we can get rid of all the heavies now, but just by going edit, refine, remove missing results. And that will definitely keep our standards around because they have results. Okay. So you'll notice that I've got, I'm going to take, I guess I'll put this retention times plot back, I think, if I double click it. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay, so you'll notice in the chromatograms graph, now when I'm looking at, so you can see, I just select the this is a really nice view to be able to just get a quick look, okay, all the IRTs are showing up. And you'll notice up at the top, just like last time when we made a mistake and we measured peptides twice, in this case we get the file drop down and it's actually the correct case where we are expecting our IRTs to be in both files, right? We want to have, it would be a bad thing if we didn't have measurements for the IRT peptides in both files. So that's one thing that Skyline will do for you. We can actually quickly switch back to those transition lists. So if you switch to the transition lists here, you switch back to the IRT folder. There's the two transition lists. If we open them up in Excel, you'll see that they both contain the standard peptides. Yeah, and I guess maybe at the bottom. Yeah, so down at the bottom, those are the standards. And if you look at the other one, you would see the same thing. And that's a property that most standards have. If you set up a QC standard or a global normalization standard, or I think pretty much all standards always get put into your transition list or your isolation or inclusion list if you're doing PRM, because you want to, even if you do multiple files, you want to measure your standards in every one of them. So that's already set up for you in Skyline for this. What would be the problem if we'd only measured the IRT standards in one of the two files? Well, we're trying to calibrate, right? So we need a regression for both files, right? We can't, and so similarly, if I'd measured half the IRTs in one file and half the IRTs in another file, that would also be a problem because I wouldn't have enough to do the regression. Okay, so now we're in residuals view for this retention times plot, IRT C18. You can see a bunch of stuff lined up here. Let's go ahead and switch back to correlation. So yeah, these are all, you know, what is this stuff at, you know, -90? They all have measured times, and they all have the score -90 or about that. Well, I just chose some arbitrary score so that I could get them. These are basically unscored. There's no way to put, you know, because 0 is taken, and there's no way to sort of show unscored other than to just kind of shift it way left of the range. So those are things for which we don't have scores in our calculator, and our whole goal is to get scores into our calculator, right? So so what we're going to do is now go into our calculator, which we can do right from here. You can right click and calculator, edit current. So in the plot you can right click and say, okay, I want to edit that calculator. I can see that there are these peptides I want to calibrate. And so yeah, we have this calculator that's got the standards in it, but it has no other peptides. So what we do is click add, and here you can see we have a choice of add results, which is going to add from the current document. That's what we're going to do. We could add a completely separate IRT database and kind of merge the two, or we could add from a spectral library. And what's the difference between adding from a spectral library and adding from these results? Where are the times coming from in a spectral library? The what? It's actually the median. It's a median time point. But yes, it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum time and not a peak time. And so, you know, I guess if you happen to get either side of a peak, then the median time will end up being pretty good. But there's lots of problems with that, including, I think somebody mentioned, like when you start looking at the IDs, you see how much of the chromatography they cover. If you have a tailing peak, right, not very sharp, and it kind of goes out like this, then you can get a median retention time pretty far away from your apex. And it turned out that in some data I got from Bruker, 3 of the Biognosis IRT peptides had this tailing. And so I actually had to, they don't use the median time, they use the like 30th percentile time just to get them closer to the apex. So there's lots of problems with, you're just gonna get more, I mean, like, we do it, other people do it, everybody does it, it's useful, it gets you in the ballpark, but if you really want high precision measurements, your times are better if they're based on a peak apex, a measured peak apex. So we're going to do that now. Just click Add Result. And Skyline, really, this is something we just added in the last year. I like a lot. And again, we just keep trying to add visibility into what's going on. So this tells us, oh, these, you now have added some points. They came from 2 different files. And then it's telling you how well the IRT peptides matched. So the R is 1.0, 11 points each, and the slopes and intercepts that were used in the regression, and it's possible that if these were really messed up, you'd get a failure here. And you're like, wow, I did not get a good enough regression that I'm confident in this. But these are both success. With either success or failure, you can click here and look at the actual regression that Skyline used to convert your points into that space. So click, you can do that. And then it's now also telling us that it's adding 148 new peptides, those are what we measured, and it took 2 runs. And so there's no failures, total success, we're good. You click OK. And now it's asking us, do we want to recalibrate the IRTs to the data? That's something we added recently. That would be, in this case, it's not going to do anything for us because we've already calibrated based on this data. But if we had used the diagnosis values, this would now give us an opportunity to do what we've already done. Just immediately here, we could have skipped all that. We could have just said, yep, diagnosis IRT values, import this data. But so we'll just say no here. Yeah.
So basically what this is doing, instead of using the diagnosis, is
Calibrating to your data. So this is the choice. Do you want to use the standard values that came from some other instrument, but will be fine if your goal is to produce a library that you're going to use across a bunch of instruments and send off to friends? Or do you want to use some values calibrated to your instrument, which is going to make your library more instrument specific, but it will also make it work better if that's all your goal is. If all your goal is to use this IRT library for this column, then I believe that I'm seeing better results, and in the lab we're doing stuff like this where we actually are building libraries that are experiment column specific, and we get better retention time prediction. But here we say no. We've already done that anyway. And now you can see that we have 148 peptides. And yes. I mean, so it's like there are just various levels, right? So we have on what variance we're going to get. But yeah, I'm talking about LC. So and it's even potentially not, it's column specific. It's like, okay, I'm going to run 50 runs, here, and I want to get as good as possible retention time prediction. You can create that library, and you will get less variance in your retention time prediction. Your retention time prediction will be a better score, a more powerful score for predicting where things are. But you have to realize that you're sacrificing some sort of transferability, and that's, it's not gonna. That will be a fine library to go share with a friend, but it's not going to be as powerful for them as it is on your own column where you created it. So, okay. Click OK. And so now we can see everything everything lines up on the line because this is the data that we calibrated these scores on. All right. So now, let's go check again our settings, peptide settings. So sort of magically, Skyline created this IRT retention time predictor because we found that we did this a lot ourselves, but it has we should open this up and look at it. So there's a difference between the predictor and the calculator. So go ahead and create edit current. And in here, we have a retention time window of 10 minutes. I don't know what do we actually want for that retention time window. But that, let's say if we want to do prediction from this, we can set this window to whatever we want. And then that would determine when we export a method based on prediction, that'll determine how wide a window we use. So okay, so now, what do we want to set that to? Sorry. Let's just set it back here somewhere. Yeah, okay, 5-minute window. And then otherwise we say we're just doing auto calibration based on the IRTs, which is what we always do with IRTs. We can also do manual calibration if we're calibrating with SSR calc. But basically we've created a new calculator. We want to be aware that the calculator has an associated window, which is how good we feel about its predictions, right? How likely are we to get the predictions in that window. So when we export a method, we export a method based on the predictions from this calculator, it's going to use this window. So we click OK. And then we also have the ability to, say use measured retention times when present. But okay, so let's, so now what we're going to do is we're going to pretend that we're taking our library to a new instrument, new chromatography. So we've created this library, and now we want to go do a 90-minute run on it, right? So, so what we would do is we would export a method to measure just the standards, and then we would calibrate everything else based on that. So let's go and we'll just click OK out of here. Do we go back to... Yes. You would right click in here and you say plot and you get correlation or residuals and you want to go to correlation. Okay, so we're going to do just on the file import menu. Sorry. Okay, so we're gonna, oh, okay. All right, so we're gonna, let's save this as a new thing. Hopefully nobody has saved it. Or we can, so we'll save it as a new thing, file save as, human plus standards dash calibrated. Oops, don't do that. Do it down here. Dash calibrated, and then save that. So everybody save it off to a new file, and then we'll reopen what we had before. Yep.
So basically, if you had checked it, you would have known that when you export the transition, it's going to use the actual retention time, not the predicted.
Yeah, if we wanted to export a method right now, we could use the measured retention time. So if we wanted to export another 30-minute method,
Yeah.
we could just go and because we have measurements for everything. So why use IRT prediction if we're staying on the same chromatography? We would just use the use measured. But what we're going to now try to do is switch to a 90-minute method based on our calibration. Or you can just think of this as switching to a new instrument or something. So we're going to try to recalibrate for a 90-minute method based on the IRTs that we've created from the 30-minute method. So we'll go and open. I guess just open this human plus standards out of your recent files list. And that should give you a blank document with nothing imported. And actually we did this. We're going to go back, we have to go back to the settings, peptide settings, and choose the predictor again. So is everybody there? Does everybody have an empty document? Standards. Notice that it still has both the light and the heavy, which is what we want. Okay, so now the first thing we're going to do is just import a document collected that has only the standards on a 90-minute. So this is our target gradient. We've done a run where we collected the transitions only for the standards. So file, import, results. And that run, it's a single injection run, okay. And I guess it's this first one. I would have expected it to be simple, but this seems to say that it's the first one. Okay, well, let's try the first one. Okay, open. If that comes in with everything, we'll know that we... No, that's pretty simple. Yeah, okay. So that's just got the IRTs in it. You can see that we don't have you can see the IRTs coming in. Okay, so all that was measured in this document were the IRTs. You can see how well they correlate. You can see that everything else has no measurements. You can see no green dots. So this is just purely a calibration run, but it will allow us now to export a method with predicted retention times. So let's switch the retention times view to the scheduling view. So graph scheduling, right click on the retention times view and show the scheduling graph. And there we have something that gives us an idea of how many concurrent transitions we would have if we did a 5-minute window, 2-minute window, or a 10-minute window. What do people think we should choose? 2 minutes? Well, they didn't choose 2 minutes. Actually, we're gonna do it based on the maximum concurrent transitions. Right. So we've already done 5 minutes. We've set our predictor at 5 minutes at this point. That's why we have this blue line. So now we're going to go in and tell Skyline how many concurrent transitions we'll allow. So we'll go File, Export Transition List. And we got to tell Skyline this is going to be a scheduled method. And it won't give us an error because we actually have information. And if we were willing to allow 335 concurrent transitions, we get one method. What's the minimum number of transitions we have to allow Skyline to still get one method? Well, we kind of saw it. We have some predictions from the scheduling graph. Anybody have a guess? I'll move this aside. You can have a closer look at the scheduling graph. So we said we were going to use a 5-minute window. That was when we opened up the predictor and we looked at the 10-minute window and we changed it to 5. So let's try 250. That's still, so this, let's go even lower. 200. Okay, 200 we need 2. So we can kind of play this game of like, oh, we need 2 at 230. With 250 we can get 1. So that's good enough for us. And we're going to go ahead and export everything to one method. And this is again, we've added the heavy, so we have more transitions to worry about this time. We've got, how many transitions do we have? 1,200. So that's pretty cool that we can actually measure 1,200 already with all, we did one measurement and we can now do replicate scheduled runs based on that. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll export our method. So this is IRT human scheduled. And if we went and looked at that, we would see scheduling windows and prediction, and it'd be ready to run. So that's good. That's good. Okay, so now we're going to go and import some. We're going to pretend we ran the mass spectrometer. And we'll now import the results, the scheduled data. So edit, or actually let's save this, save as, and we'll call it standards 90 min. So add 90 minutes to the end of it, and save. And now we'll go back to the one we were just editing, the standards one. Oh, I wonder what's in there. Yeah, okay, that looks good. Do people have this? Does everybody have the clock faces by the IRT saved? No? Anybody not? If you don't, again, if you didn't get in a save there, you can get your clock faces back by going to peptide settings and choosing this IRT predictor. Okay, so now we want to import the scheduled data. So file, import results. How many injections in the replicates? 1, because we scheduled it. Yeah, but it's gonna be everything. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be huge. Huge. So there we go. It's the last one. Simple. Everybody have that? And then click OK, and that will start importing, and you'll see lots more peaks. I guess those are the IRT peaks showing up. And go slowly. IRT peaks are nice and big. Everything else is coming in kind of slowly, but it's I guess I'll put the pin down just so that I can see how long it took. Wow, most things are pretty small compared to the IRTs, huh? Alright, so that's done. Took me 42 seconds. Anybody else finished? Okay. Close. Let's switch retention times back to view. Well, let's do the regression. View regression, score to run. Retention times regression. So there we have it. Things are pretty well lined up with our scores, but what is noteworthy here? Yeah, there's some serious outliers. So these things, let's go click on the outlierest outlier. And you can see that, like, you know, I'm going to double click on the title bar here to put this back into the docs view. So Skyline is picking Nat, and if we go to auto scale x-axis both, that will show me both the prediction. Whoa, where's the prediction? Do I have predictions for other things? Do other people see a prediction line? What? Yes? And it's just me? Something about my settings. What? Let me see. Why am I not seeing the prediction? Mass error, peak boundaries. Attention time prediction. Huh. Somehow my prediction is not connected.
Just open the peptide settings again, press play, and then
Okay. Wow. Okay. Not sure what happened, what was going on there. So now I think hopefully, yeah. Okay. So it's showing me. So if I've got it both, then I can see both the great peak and I can see the best peak in the prediction. And most of the time they're going to be really close. But in this case, yeah. So this just means that whoever did, you know, we didn't curate the data at all when we trained these things. We just like let it take the pick peak, and so whoever curated the data, so we could have gone through every peptide and curated them, and whoever curated the data actually thought that there was something over it way at the end of the gradient that was this peptide, and Skyline just automatically chose this one. So we don't have a great prediction for this one, maybe. Again, we were doing it all based on light, which is not necessarily even injected standards. We might have been better off to calibrate based on injected heavy standards. But so this may just be due to a calibration error. And now Skyline really has to look in, you know, potentially not even the right place for the peptide. So we might think about like, oh, we got to go back and look at that. But for most of the cases, I think you will see that if you run through things, you should see pretty nice peaks very close to the predictions, even though we changed chromatography, right? We calibrated on 30-minute and switched to 90-minute, which is not what I recommend, but it was just to sort of show the power of IRT is that you can scale the gradient like that. So final questions, this is wrapping up IRT. Tomorrow we'll pick something entirely new for Skyjams. Last chance to ask questions about IRT. Well, you can come ask them to me privately if you want. Yes?
If you thought that you had those two 30-minute replicas that you got and your IRT standard and you're also picking the peaks, could you use, how would you actually specify peaks, the actual retention time of the peaks to use? Or specify their location of 30-minute gradient, 90-minute gradient?
Didn't catch that one.
Okay, so what you just said is you had one where somebody just allowed Skyline to take the peak.
Yeah, we did that. So let's go back.
How would you set it?
Okay, so let's go back to the data. So we have our standard. So if you go back one file and go and let Skyline save this file, yes, to save changes. So this is the file. No, this is not the file. We're gonna have to go back further. Go back to calibrated. So this is the file we calibrated based on. Darn, does anybody remember the name of that peptide? Okay, we got to go back and so switch again to the one that was problematic. So, whoops. What was it? Oh, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go back to calibrated, and you can just tell me. So I would just go Control F. Oops. Control F to find, what is it?
The protein is
LLAD. That's the peptide you mean? Okay, so this gives us some view into, oh, that's kind of interesting. So, I guess I'll put this back. So we're picking, for that peptide, we're picking something out at 33, which is toward the end of the gradient. Oh, right. Opposite thing. So what, I got things backwards. So the person who did the experiment obviously picked something really close at the front of the gradient. And maybe this is it. Right? So what happened was, we're looking at the data that got collected by Biognosis, right? So that means that Biognosis thought that the peptide was in the beginning of the gradient. And we picked a peak that was at the end of the gradient. So now we can play, if we wanted to say, oh yeah, this is probably it then. Must be this one. We could click that and then we could recalibrate that point up into that location. And maybe it would match better with what Biognosis was looking at. So that's how we would do it. And now I have to turn over the floor to our esteemed guest, Andy Hoofnagel.